lush and lovely are very good, as they should plant, because look at that. Look at these beauties down here. Hello, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. A lot is going on in the garden. We are just now entering July. The garden is in a little bit of a transition, at least in here. I had a bunch of onions in these beds on the edge of the greenhouse. There's 4 beds here, and then there's 4 beds on the other side. And all of those onions have since been harvested. I did a soil test. My soil does need amending, which I did expect. I have not done that yet, but that is on the agenda. So when it comes to putting things back in the greenhouse, I really have to have fall time in mind. I have this greenhouse so that I can grow more easily in the fall and winter time, not necessarily so I can grow in the summer. And so the fall and winter garden really takes precedence in this space. And I want to put in my fall and winter garden around the middle of September. So I'm trying to keep in mind, if I put something in now, I need to be able to harvest it and get the plants out and get these beds amended by September. So truthfully, some of these beds may sit empty until September. We're just gonna have to see. It will be important for me to keep watering them, because even if there's not plants in the beds, there's plenty of microbial life and worms and things. The soil is alive, and I wanna keep that up so the soil will be ready for plants when I am ready to put them in. So, okay, I guess we'll start here in the middle of the greenhouse. I have these spaghetti squash plants that I put in really before our estimated last frost date. So they've been in here for a really long time, and they have since gone by. However, we do have a harvest in here, and we are starting to harvest quite a lot of food, which is great. And I want to get these out. These are definitely ready to come off. I talked about this in a recent vlog, but we'll go over it again. There's a couple different ways to know that your squash is ready to harvest, but my favorite way is just the fingernail test. I gently press my fingernail into the rind of the squash, and if my thumbnail does not leave an impression, then the rind is hard enough to last in storage, and we can take this off. All these yellow ones. There are some that are a little bit lighter, like this guy in here, and if I put my fingernail on this squash, you can see that I am leaving a little bit of an impression. I want this rind to toughen up some more. And because this vine is dying back, the plant is triggered to ripen the fruit fast. So even if I have a small fruit, like this little guy up here, you see him, that's gonna ripen as well. Although that one does look a little bit wrinkly. So this one might actually be pig food. That's okay. That one's squishy and wrinkly. A lot of times a plant will just ripen the fruit no matter what size it is. Ooh, green lacewing. I just noticed a beneficial predator insect right there, a green lacewing. Happy to see it. I did put some green lacewing larvae in my greenhouse last year. I didn't notice any benefits last year, but I see the adults this year. That's very good to see. When cutting a spaghetti squash or any winter squash off from the vine, you want to make your stem as long as you can. This is basically an open wound right now to the inside of the fruit, and the shorter that this pathway is, the more likely it is that something nasty is going to come in through here and ruin the fruit from the inside out. This eventually, and really not very long from now, will harden and turn brown, and at that point everything is sealed off. But for now, we want to take care that we don't introduce something nasty into the fruit. But not too bad. These are the 4 that had the hardest rinds, and so this is what we'll take today. Now, back at the front of the greenhouse, the Malabar spinach that volunteered on this side is doing incredibly well. I've been harvesting these to put on my sandwiches or to use instead of bread at my sandwiches at lunchtime, a lot like you would a lettuce wrap. But I think there's only 1 plant down here. There might be 2, but the Malabar spinach has reached the top of the trellis. You can see it kind of weaving all over itself there. It may or may not get the gumption to go this way, but usually plants want to grow upward. They don't necessarily want to grow downward. You can kind of see the same thing happening with the cucamelons. There are only 2 cucamelon plants here, and they are looking lush and lovely. You can see the little cucamelons way at the top. My daughter and I actually came out yesterday to harvest some of the more fiddly things, the cucamelons, the blackberries, and the green beans. I used to harvest everything on camera during a garden tour, and not that I never will do that again, but it took us over an hour to harvest all of those things, and it's been really hot outside. So I took a picture of our harvest from yesterday, and I'll put that in here because this is a harvest and garden tour. But the cucamelons grow so fast. I feel like some of these that we left just last night are on the verge of ready this morning. These are not far off. There's so many. We harvested about a quart's worth of cucamelons yesterday. Oh yeah, there are some that are getting a lot bigger. And the plan is for me to ferment that quart of cucamelons. They're so good fermented. We do have some volunteer ground cherries in here, and these are actually looking quite good. There's quite a few plants, and I've just left them here, and I'm glad for it. Now, basically all of my ground cherries will get these scars on them. I think that this is from flea beetles. A lot of the times when I'm growing eggplant, they love the eggplant and they do love ground cherries, but they tend to not really bother the plants. I see the evidence of the flea beetles, but I don't do anything for it because it doesn't affect the harvest or the production or the health of the plants at all. Got a lot of these green lanterns. These are not ready to harvest. The kids have been harvesting some out of their garden. Last year I grew a bunch of ground cherries in here with, number one, the hopes that they would come back because ground cherries love to volunteer, but also I wanted to have enough to preserve. Usually we just graze on these as we go through the garden. We graze on a lot of things, but basically I don't have anything to preserve with my ground cherries. But last year I did, and I made a freezer jam out of the ground cherries. I took a video on that and I'll link it down below. These little trees that you see in the middle here, I've got 2 of them. There's one here and there's one over there. These are my bonfire peach trees. They do have red leaves most of the time, but when they're shaded, the leaves turn green. And I do have some peaches on here. They are still small. They haven't really been growing big, so I hope we get peaches this year. Some right there. They smell good. All the tomatoes that I have on this side of the trellis are volunteer plants. Now some of them I moved into these spots, but I did not intentionally plant these this year. They just came back from seed. And we are starting to see what kind of tomatoes they are, or at least to get a guess as to what they were, what these seeds came from. Last year I grew a tomato called Super Sweet 100 in the greenhouse. I believe it's the only red cherry that I grew in here, and so I'm guessing that this comes from that. These are very good, but you can see here some empty spots where we've harvested. This is what happens. This truss grew out real long, and the first flowers to open were back here, and the last flowers to open were down here, and so they ripen in the same fashion. They'll ripen from the oldest flower onto the youngest, and so we won't be able to harvest a full truss of ripe fruit because of this, but this is really fun. I like seeing the different colors all on one truss. It's just beautiful. I haven't done a lot of pruning or training to the trellis lately. Really, this branch can probably come off. This plant has a lot of vines on the outside of the trellis that are doing really well, so I probably could prune this one off, but I will do that later. This one is also a red tomato, much like the one next door. This plant right here, I'm hoping is a blue cream berry, which is a light yellow fruit with blue or purple shoulders, and all I have are green fruits right now. This fruit right here is squishy. Green tomatoes are quite dense, and as they start to ripen, you can feel that they get a little bit of give to the fruit. It's like it gets juicier as it ripens. So this little fruit down here has some give, but I'm gonna leave, ooh, maybe I won't leave it. I messed with it too much. This probably is a blue cream berry. They are like yellow tomatoes, but it's a very light yellow. It's obviously not ripe, but it's not bad. But I think that's what these are. Same thing with the tomato next door. I think it's the blue cream berry. This here is the highlight of my greenhouse. My archway of armpit melons. These fuzzy little beauties. Quick overview on the armpit melon for those of you who have not heard of such a thing. This is a cross between a Kajari and a Charente melon. This was an accidental cross that happened on my homestead, and I planted what I thought was going to be Kajari seeds in my garden the year after I grew a Kajari and a Charente next to each other. And I got this lovely cross, which has a very musky scent to it, but a really amazing flavor with a little bit of almost an umami, tomatoey aftertaste. Super yummy, and I'm trying to stabilize the seed. So the armpit melon is the only melon that I planted on my homestead this year because we have so many pollinators that love to visit each flower. I wanted to reduce the risk of there being some cross-pollination that might mess with the genetics. I have 6 armpit melons, 3 on this side and 3 on this side, and they are looking exactly as they should. They look a little bit like a baby Kajari melon, except for Kajaris have a lot more of this dark green and they are not fuzzy. Armpit melons are fuzzy and they look like a muted version of a Kajari melon. It's actually pretty interesting. The different plants have like a different patterned fruit. So this plant over here has a little bit more of that green between the ribs, and this one too, the pattern is just a little bit different. And as these ripen, these darker green parts will turn orange and the lighter green parts will turn white. It's not going to be very long. They get a little bit bigger than they are right now, but not much bigger. They're like a personal melon. Really excited to see them. My herb green stalk is wild and crazy. I have done basically nothing but harvest fresh out of it. I have not preserved anything. That wasn't really my intention. It's just sort of something that happened. I really would like to tidy this up and get it looking a little bit better, but for now, that's how it is. Things are alive. I think the thyme is probably the thing that's doing the best. Once our hot days really set in, the chamomile decided it didn't want to do anymore, but the seeds have absolutely fallen, and so I am sure we will have some volunteer chamomile in the greenhouse probably this fall and winter, which will be really exciting to see. But I've got things like marjoram, parsley. You can see I've got dill right here. There is some spearmint over on this side, which I'm very excited about. That I will probably harvest soon. Yeah, you can see that there are some parts of my garden and greenhouse that are a little bit neglected by this time of year. Got this guy that needs help. There's a lot of weeds in the walkway. It's just part of it. Over on this side of the armpit melons, I planted quite a few lima beans, and it looks like they are starting to set their pods. Lima beans are real cool. They set off this almost spike of flowers like this, and when they are pollinated, you get a spike of beans. And these guys look like they about fruit the same way as those tomatoes that also grow on kind of a spike. The peas, or the beans that are lower down with the older flowers, are bigger, and then as you get further towards the tip, the little beans get younger and younger, so they're smaller and smaller. These guys were planning on harvesting as dry beans and shelling them and storing them as dry beans, so I'm just an observer right now. We're just gonna watch them and let them do their thing. None of them are ready to harvest right now. This row of beans right here are Kalima bush beans that I've had in here for quite a while. They went through one flush of flowers and beans, and they are on their second flush of flowers and beans, which usually is the bigger one. Lots of flowers, which means we will have lots and lots of beans. My daughter and I harvested these yesterday. And right about now is the time where we start seeing a little bit of disease in the plants. This is expected and very normal. Sometimes when I'm coming through here and picking beans, I will take out some of the yellow leaves just to give the plant a little bit more energy to put towards the fruit, but this is to be expected, and so I don't fuss too much about it. After this flush of beans, which will last a couple of weeks, we'll take the plants out and get ready for fall time. I know it's weird to be talking about fall time this early in the year, but in our area, we got to kind of think about that. I want to plant the fall and winter garden and have it harvested by Christmas time. Now on this side of the trellis, I planted quite a lot of garlic. There's a variety over here called silver white. It's definitely at the stage where it needs to be harvested. But this is what I have, and this may be the time where I tell some viewers that you were right. However, here's the thing. Normally, when I plant my garlic, I plant it in my established garden that is on the side of my house. I call it my perennial garden, and we're definitely gonna go check that out. That garden space has been established for a really long time. Normally that's where I plant my garlic, and I plant it in February. I don't overwinter my garlic, and my garlic always does really well. Well, this year I planted a little bit later. It was about March. I wasn't too worried about it because I actually have planted garlic cloves in July before and gotten heads of garlic in October. So I know that you don't, I guess with some varieties, you don't have to be super fussy about your garlic, but the garlic isn't performing well in my greenhouse. But I think there's a few reasons for that. Number one is that this greenhouse space, the beds in here are really young, so the soil hasn't had a lot of time to develop and have good nutrients in it. But also, planting the garlic at the base of these really big plants did starve them for light, and plants need light just as much as they need nutrition from the soil. And so these guys didn't have a lot going for them. They were planted later than normal. They didn't have a good amount of light, and I think the nutrition just wasn't optimal. I was terrified to amend this space this year because I was real worried about over fertilizing and having a huge bug problem like I had last year. There were aphids and whiteflies galore, and ultimately I'm glad that I did not fertilize. I mean, a lot of plants are doing well despite me not adding in amendments. These tomato plants are beautiful and they are bug free, at least for the most part. So yeah, you win some and you lose some, and that is just part of gardening. This is something funny that I noticed. These are squash bug eggs that are on this tomato leaf. Squash bug might be the reason that these spaghetti squash have gone by the wayside, and now that these plants are dead, there's not much for the squash bug to eat. I don't think they can really harm the tomato, but just in case. Now this side of the greenhouse is where I have some peppers growing. This is a pepper that the seeds were sent to me by a viewer. You'll see him in the comments. He goes by Tater online, and Tater crossed a golden jalapeno with a habanero and sent me the seeds, and this is what we have. It is his suggestion that I harvest some of the first peppers so that it triggers the plant to put on more flowers, but really this plant has put on a lot of flowers already, and this is what the fruit looks like so far. He tells me that these will ripen to red eventually if we left them on, and I do plan on leaving some on for later in the season. But I'm gonna pick these now, and I think I'll have my husband taste test them, probably not on this video, but maybe the next one. And then I want to ferment some hot sauce. So I took off some of the bigger ones here, and I'm leaving some of these on to get a little bit bigger. But there's a lot of fruit and tons of flowers, which obviously will be fruit at some point. It's doing well. Oh my goodness, look what I just noticed. Oh, darn it. Looky there. One of the praying mantis was on the pepper plant. I'll put him over here. There you go, little guy. Oop. There's one of our praying mantises. Happy to see you too. We had praying mantis egg capsules hatch, 2 of them, in the greenhouse earlier in the year. And I've seen a couple of those little, I guess, I don't know, they're juveniles or adults. I don't know how big the adults, actually, yeah, I feel like they get a lot bigger than that, but I've seen quite a few of them. Alrighty, over here are our Megatron jalapenos. Most of them are Megatron jalapenos. I also have one regular jalapeno in here. But we are going to be making a harvest off of this plant, because look at that. This jalapeno is humongous. And that's probably where these jalapenos get their name. It actually feels like it has a super thick wall. This is my first time growing this variety, but I think I'd like to harvest some of these as well to kind of cut the hot sauce that I make. I don't want it to be super fiery hot, and my husband has really liked the jalapeno hot sauces that I've made in the past. Just come through here and cut these off. There we go. It's a small start to the pepper harvest for this year, but I tell you, these plants will produce a ton. And a lot like the green beans, the peppers will also put on flushes. You'll see a series of flowers come on first, and you'll get those through. And then in a lot of areas, the season is long enough to get a second flush of fruit. And then in a place like this, in the greenhouse, we might be able to get a third succession of blooms, which will be even bigger. Each succession of blooms that the plants put on, as long as the plant is healthy and well fed, is bigger and bigger. Now over here I have this growing space that I call the lane. I used to grow in ground over here, and we are working on making this a raised bed space. At the end here I do have some grow bags with some different things in them. This is, I think, the biggest roselle plant that we have. I've got, I think it's 6 or 7 roselle planted around the homestead. And they have absolutely adored all of the heat that we've had. From what I hear, we'll have a lot of foliage first, and then we'll get some blooms in late summer. And then in the fall time, it'll form those calyxes, really cool looking fruits, and that's what we harvest. I am really excited about that. This is my first year growing roselle, and apparently the little calyxes have a flavor of cranberry in teas and jellies and all manner of things. Behind that we have a decent amount of cowpeas planted. Now this is a variety of cowpeas, got several different types. There are black-eyed peas, chicken and dumpling cowpeas, and purple hull pink-eye peas. And they have started to flower and set little baby pods. They do it in pairs like this. Isn't that cool? So I have been kind of coming through here and trying to poke the vines through the trellis here, because they will wrap around. They don't really put out any tendrils that will grab holds, but here we go. See, this guy has started to wrap around, and this will absolutely fill this up and probably flop over. There's going to be so many pods on here by the time we are into full harvest, but it is just starting now. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed this the other day. We have a rogue cucumber over here. Now, it's not the healthiest plant that there ever was, but it's here, and it looks like it is trying to set fruit. When I was growing in ground here, I grew 2 types. The Beit Alpha, some people call it Beit Alpha, B-E-I-T, one word, alpha cucumber, and I grew some gherkins. And I got a cross, as often happens. So what volunteered here last year was a cucumber that looked a little bit like this. It was like a really spiny, kind of mushy, underwhelming little cucumber, but we'll see what it does. There's some cucamelons down here. Molly and I harvested off of this yesterday. They've reached the top of the trellis already, and I'm a little bit worried about them taking over things like this other roselle, but we'll try to keep them in check. Now from there, where that roselle is, all the way through here, it's just weeds until we get to the beds that are down here. Now I haven't weed whacked around the beds, but that's fine. It is what it is this time of year. Here's where I have some different tomatoes. Now these guys are not doing as well as I had hoped that they would, but that's okay. I think part of the issue with these tomatoes is that they are the farthest planting space from my house, so I don't visit every day like I do some other spaces, and because of that, some pests and disease can get not just overlooked, but just not seen. And you can see the results here. I think it was my last vlog. I talked about how healthy the plants are out here. Well, they're starting to look a little less healthy at this point, which honestly shouldn't surprise me. They looked healthier than I thought they should for all the rain that we've gotten this year. And we do have tomato hornworms. When my daughter and I were out here yesterday, we picked quite a few off. I have a black light, and my husband and I have come out and picked them off, but there are just loads and loads of them, and the plants don't look really good. This is evidence of tomato hornworms. They will defoliate a plant so fast in the blink of an eye. I hope these guys can bounce back, but I do sort of have my doubts. We're coming into some of the hottest parts of the summer, and when a plant is already struggling, it's going to be hard for them to really rebound. So we'll do what we can over here, but I'm not really counting on getting a whole ton of fruit off of these plants. Obviously, we'll get some. These are my Dr. Witchy's tomatoes. And then down here, I planted Belgian Giants from saved seed. What's funny is these tomatoes, this tomato here and this tomato here, were planted from saved seed out of the same fruit, but they are not the same thing. Pollination is a crazy thing. Look at that. So that looks kind of like some of the tomatoes that we have growing in the greenhouse with these long, beautiful trusses. But this here is not what I planted. It's gorgeous though. I'm real excited to see what it tastes like. Down here we've got a truss that's a little bit older, still hard. This will be real fun to see what happens. And down on the end here, this tomato was also planted from the seeds, saved from the same fruit, and it looks even different. This here looks like an ox heart tomato. This truss is massive. There's so many fruit on here. But again, this isn't what I thought I planted, but that's okay. These are amazing tomatoes and I'm glad to have them. Tomato blossoms have everything that they need in them to pollinate themselves. They can be self-fertile. And so if you want to save a seed from a tomato plant and have it breed true, but you can put netting around a truss of buds that haven't opened, and they'll open and you can just tickle the plant like this, and the blooms that are inside the bag will actually shake pollen down onto the reproductive parts of the plant, and it'll self-pollinate and you'll get a plant that breeds true, as long as you're working with something like an heirloom or like an established variety. And the tool bag that you slipped on the outside of it will prevent pollinators getting in there and introducing a different type of pollen, because that's what happened to us. There was one fruit that had several different types of pollen, and then we're seeing the results of that happen here. I think it's pretty cool. I did hope for more Belgian giants, but that's okay. The experiment is neat. I keep forgetting to mention this, but in my goat pen out here, I do have some volunteer squash, and this is very likely Dutch fork pie pumpkin. So I'm leaving them here, and there is a spigot right there, so if we do have a lack of rain, I can very easily water these plants. We grew, it was 80, almost 80 Dutch fork pie pumpkins out of 14 plants last year, and a lot of them I fed out to the animals. Really excited to see them return this year. I am actually surprised that I haven't seen more of those pumpkins, but I'm grateful for the ones that I have seen. The kids' garden is looking lush and lovely. This is probably at its peak. Addie's zinnias are open and gorgeous. The girls have been putting flowers in their hair every day. They've got peppers and cucumbers galore. Came out here and mowed and make sure we didn't mow over his cucumber plant, but they have been harvesting dozens of cucumbers from all the plants every day. And it's wild and crazy, but they absolutely love it. Now here, we may have some evidence of hornworms, finally, on this side. Let's see if we can find it. Yep, okay. There it is. That's a fatty. There is probably more than one, because I see damage here, and there's some damage here. See, it's just like eaten off. So we'll send them out tonight with a black light, because these guys glow. It's kind of amazing. Chuk, 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 chuk. There does get to be a point in the season where we have fed out so many hornworms to the chickens that they just leave them when we throw them in there. They get tired of them. All right, now this is our first garden that we had at this homestead. Most of this was established when we got here. These U-shaped beds we did put in after, but they've been in here for about 5 years. So this garden tends to do better than the gardens that we just looked at because it's established. And that's something to keep in mind. If you are brand new to gardening and your first several years are really not what you hoped for, sometimes it is. The beginner's luck is a thing for sure. And really, I don't mean to say that like gardening is hard, but especially with the bagged soils and things that are available on the market, starting out gardening can be really hard. You're learning and your soil is establishing, and so try not to be too hard on yourself. There are things that are working against you a little bit, but not to the degree where it's not worth doing, because it's absolutely worth doing. As you can see, our sunflowers, all of these are volunteers, and they are peaked right now. And I was hoping that they would all still be peaking by the time I was able to film the garden tour. Can you see all the bees? We've got even some more sunflowers out here. Gorgeous. Most of these look like they're multi-headed. Actually, all of them look like they are multi-headed varieties. It's not just a sunflower with a stalk with one big head on the top. As you can see, there are many little tiny heads. I think I like this more. So cheerful. Down here, I do have some May pops. These are passion flowers, Passiflora incarnata. I do want to move this over just a little. I want to encourage this particular plant to take over the trellis on this side and not really get too shaded out by my gorgeous sunflowers over here. But I've got two plants. There's one there and one there. And I didn't expect them to grow as much as they have this season. They have really taken off. I do have a subscriber that said, "Oh, Heather, don't you worry. That maypop will take over your trellis by the end of the season." And I think you're probably right. I'm wondering too if we have some little flower buds starting. I'm not really sure if these are flower buds or just more vines. Kind of looks like it might be more vines, but I'm not sure. We could have some flower buds. I would love to be able to show you guys how gorgeous these flowers are. And this is perennial in our area. So not only are the flowers gorgeous, but the fruit that they set. The passion fruits are really, really delicious. They're a favorite of mine and my kids, so we're happy to have them right here in the front of our house. If you've been watching the garden tours, you know that this space was really taken over by volunteered tomatoes. I did a lot of weeding in this garden in the last week, and honestly, most of what I took out were those volunteer tomatoes. You can see some down here. This will probably have to come out. And I know that's heartbreaking to some, but these tomatoes are so plentiful that I am not worried about it. We've got a bunch of them. Actually, everything right here was a volunteer yellow currant tomato, and they have started to ripen. These are awesome little fruits. So good. Some yellow tomatoes are quite underwhelming. These guys have a very good savory umami punch, a little bit of sweetness. Easily my favorite tomato flavor. And this is a tomato that I haven't planted in I don't know how many years at this point. The tomatoes are so numerous that inevitably some of them drop and they very readily reseed, and they come back year after year on my farm, and it's a real big blessing. We do have some measure of disease out here. This is to be expected this time of year, but for the most part, these guys are doing real well. Behind them, you can see how well the blackberries are doing. The blackberries had a lot of flowers at one point, and then we had all these little green baby fruit. The little green fruit turn red, and then the red fruit eventually turns black. So I came through here with my daughter yesterday and harvested some berries, but we left some of them on that looked like they weren't quite ready, but they ripen fast. With things like this, and with the cucumelons, and with the green beans, I harvest every 2 days. That one was a little sour. Could have been left on a little longer, but look at them all. I adore our wild blackberry patch so much. It does take some maintenance. I need to reclaim my aisle here frequently throughout the season, but it's gorgeous and plentiful. Look at these beauties down here. Lots of green tomatoes. This here is my Dr. Witchies, and we've got some gorgeous fluted fruits here. Next door is a celebrity tomato, and then for the most part, the rest are Heatmaster tomatoes. That's what I've got going on over here on the other side of our sunflowers. The Heatmasters are performing very well. So many green fruits, gorgeous. I have come through frequently to take out some parts of the plant, mostly what I call the sun leaves. These leaves here that are not the productive part of the plant, just to give these plants airflow. This morning is a pretty good example of a typical morning here on our farm. The air just doesn't move at night in the summer. The air is very still and it's very humid, so we've got this dew that's incredibly heavy that just settles on the plants. And when there's not a lot of airflow to begin with, when the air is like literally not moving, and when the leaves of the plants are wet, like I just brushed up against this sunflower here and there's giant drip of moisture is going down my arm. That's not from rain, that's from the dew. This is an amazing vector for disease, so we're trying to keep disease at bay. The Heatmasters are a hybrid tomato, and most hybrids are bred for some kind of benefit. They're either bred to be pest resistant, disease resistant. This one is bred to do well in the heat. A lot of tomatoes will drop their blossoms when it gets too hot, and the Heatmaster doesn't. It just cranks them out. And I find it to be decently disease resistant, unlike some other tomatoes we may know. This poor green stalk. There's gotta be a hornworm over here. Look at this big chunk taken out. Oh, yep, there it is. See that big baddie right there? Gross. I really don't want the disease or the pests to transfer, but they may not. A lot of times sick plants are just an attractant for pests, and these guys have absolutely seen better days. They've had it hard to begin with. So I'm just getting off of them what I can. This is the Wild Boar Farms Mini Marzano, which is really gorgeous. I didn't expect it to have some streaking. Oh, it's so pretty. I think this one may be a raspberry tomato. Down here, this tomato is called Golden Hour. And then I did have a plant tag in here for one called Limelight, which I think ripens as a green tomato, and those are the ones that I have to squeeze to check if they are ready. They don't just turn color. And I'd like to be able to at least try them before all of these plants eventually succumb. It's not going to be long. This green stalk looks horrible. Oh, here we go. This one, that's Limelight. So just give them a squeeze. Yeah, I don't think these ones are ripe yet, but I'll be watching that. We're getting something, but this green stalk is not doing as well as it did last year. This gorgeous plant right here is the bee balm. It's a little bit past its peak, but the bees don't seem to mind. Ooh, they're loving it. My golden chamomile is also kind of past its peak. I never did come through here and deadhead anything, and so part of this is probably my fault, but we did have a series of very hot days there for a little while, and so I'd be looking pretty sad too if I was outside in it the whole time. I did have some volunteer zinnia come up in these tomato beds, and I left them in. It looks like one of them is yellow for sure, and the other one is a pink variety. Aren't those gorgeous? It's fun to me that they wound up being different. My dill has looked happier, and I have come through and harvested quite a few heads. Actually, I could probably come through here later today and harvest even more. I do want to leave some of these on because I like that they reseed and come back, and they're not going to do that if I take off the heads because this is where the seeds will be. But there's a lot of them out here, and so I feel like I can still come through and make a harvest. I think that when it comes to fermenting the cucamelons, I am going to throw in some of these flowering dill heads. That's going to be a really good flavor. This area is wild and crazy, but that's not stopping these grapes any. This is a Concord variety called Sunbelt, and they will ripen to purple. You can see that I do have some bags over some of them. I may or may not put some bags over all of them, but I wanted to see if it was really necessary. I did this to try to prevent birds from coming in and pecking at them and taking all the fruit, but so far it seems like at least the birds are leaving the green fruits alone. I may pull that leaf off just because of the disease. That one too. But yeah, I don't know how long it takes them to ripen, but there's a lot of fruit in there. There's two plants here. There's one there and there's one down here. And this one has some gorgeous clusters as well. Just waiting on them. I've got a steam juicer in my wish list, and I plan to order that pretty soon because that's what I want to use these for. I want to steam juice them down and make our own grape jelly. Here are our Jerusalem artichokes. I am anticipating some flowers to come up soon, but not yet. I've got 3 of my roselle plants down here, and they are responding well to the heat. Ooh, that's probably not good. It's one of those types that you don't really want to touch. I don't know what this is. There are some caterpillars that aren't bad. I'll just set them over here, away from the plant. I feel like we are at maximum chaos back here in the garden. This looks pretty tragic, but this is really, really common and normal for this time of year. I have, though, my volunteer squash that does have some open flowers down here. Those do look like male flowers. Wow, did you see what I almost walked into? I don't know if this is gonna come up on camera, but there's a big web right here. It's probably the size of a dinner plate. We're gonna walk around the other side and look at this. come around the asparagus, and through here we have, there's our squash doing the thing that I hoped it would do. We've got an open flower down here too. I'm pretty sure these are all male flowers. I did see a little immature fruit, and it looks like this is a pumpkin. I hope it is. The leaves do look a little bit different than what I remember from our Dutch fork pie pumpkin, but in any case, it's doing well, and I'm gonna leave it. It's doing its thing. We'll maybe direct it out that way. I don't know, I've got my plans for it, but it'll probably override those and tell me what it wants to do. The blueberries are doing very well. We are almost past our blueberry season, but honestly, for how small these plants are, we have harvested quite a few ripe berries, and I think that my owl on a stick is doing a really good job because we have had no problems with bird pressure. I wondered if I was going to need to get some netting to put over these berries in order to make sure that we got a harvest, but I honestly don't think I'm going to have to, at least not this year. And that's good. Less to worry about. My Carlos muscadines are a little bit further behind than the other grapes that I have. They're just a different type altogether, but they are also getting big. You see those there? These are going to stay green, kind of like a light yellowy green. Yep, these are plentiful as well, and I know that these are more like a fall harvest. This is also our second year with these plants. They're huge and producing a lot. One last thing. Oh, look at that. This guy fell off when I was pruning the other day and I forgot to bring it inside. That's not what I wanted to show you. Down here, this is what I wanted to show you. I noticed that I had our first blushing tomato. This is a heat master. And for now, I think I'm gonna leave this little fruit. Once a tomato starts blushing, it really will ripen pretty quickly inside. To be honest, this guy right here is already starting to ripen a little bit. I don't know if you can tell next to this green one here, but it is doing sort of a blush. I ran this experiment a couple of years ago where I took some green tomatoes off of the vine to try to figure out how long it took them to ripen, and it was actually several weeks. They sat for several weeks before they did anything, and they all did ripen to a bright red, but they tasted awful. They were horrible. So there's definitely something to be said about vine ripening tomatoes, or at least letting them start to blush on the vine. Once they start to blush on the vine, the flavor is still really good. But if you pick them green and then let them ripen, which is what happens with a lot of store-bought tomatoes, no good. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that guy out there for now and let it ripen on the vine. And hopefully that is the first of many ripe tomatoes that we have. It looks promising out here.